how do we bring in information to the brain, and then how do we perceive what's going on in our world. All right, everybody do this? All right, come on. Ah, there we are. It's kind of a dull color. Need to change that. See if that. All right, sensation and perception. Really kind of two different chapters, but they put them together. Sensation and perception. If the doors of perception were cleansed, and the doors are going to be your sensation as information comes into your brain, then man would see everything as it is, infinite. So what does that really mean? What basically that means is the way we perceive the world is probably not very real. Right? What you're sitting here today for an hour and 20 minutes, your perception of what goes on in this class is, one, going to change as we go through the class, but two, the person sitting next to you may have a completely different perception of what's going on. You get that? Perception is how we basically see the world. All right? So I have all kinds of illusions. What do you see? Or the next question then would be, what do you perceive? Now some of you just see one thing there, right? You see an older man and an older woman kind of looking at each other. Now keep looking at it because you'll see a lot of other pictures up there, don't you? All right, so what else do you see up there? A lady, somebody playing a guitar. Right, and another lady across, a lady or a man, lady across from him.
I see another man in the lady's face.
Another man in the lady's face. Okay, there's a lady in a door. I'm just going to roll this stuff off. If you see something else, you can. A lot of you are sitting here going, well, what's going on? I don't see that. What's happening here? There's a bottle, right? There's a bottle, like a clear bottle. Now again, this is about perception. Right? Sometimes we use the word what do you see, but it's really what do you perceive that's there. All right, there's an older man, bald head, hair here, an older woman, gray hair, lots of wrinkles there, not many wrinkles there. But then in their faces, there's a man, right? He's got a sombrero on, got a mustache, playing guitar. This is his arm, his legs this way. There's a woman, she has her knees up. She's got a skirt on, right? Hands are up here. There's a bottle over here. Right? There's a woman in the doorway over here. Lots of information going on there. But, okay, we don't all perceive what's going on. Okay, look at that one there. If you tilt your head. Oh, I got it now. Now, what's really funny is watching you all tilt your heads. So, yeah, tell the person next to you. Now, as you explain this to somebody else, once again, we're perceiving. How do we communicate with each other? Okay? How can we work out agreements if we don't, perceive the world in similar ways? The way we can get to this is we start, talking to each other like you're doing right now? How can we resolve conflicts in the Middle East, the United States, or any other place if we have different perceptions of the world. I told you I'm going to do a seminar on the mind of a terrorist. Right? Well, they changed the date on me. It's going to be November the 7th now to do this. But one person's perception of these people is that they're suicide bombers, they're crazy, they're sociopaths. Another perception is they're martyrs, right? They're heroes. Now, that's not our perception, but perception is based on one, brain functioning, but it's also based on psychological conditioning, modeling. That's there, and environmental issues, values, and everything else that's there. What you see here is what? A bunch of rocks in a lake, but if you tilt your head a little bit, what you see is a woman laying here, and then she's holding a baby. So what is real, when we look out in our worlds, what we bring into our brains visually, in terms of smell and all of the different senses, our brain then perceives what's going on. What's real may not be really real that happens in the world. Right? How many conversations have you gotten into with somebody where you say, well, that's not what I meant? And they say, well, that's the way I perceived it. You'll also hear in psychology or in human behavior, people say, well, it's all about perception. It's all about how you perceive. Right? Which is true, right? Cowboys are going to the Super Bowl, aren't they? I doubt it, but that's all how you perceive. Sometimes when you look at these, your brains get locked into one image, and it's very hard to see the other image. That is also a good example of sometimes how prejudiced we can get and bias we can get because we get locked into one view, and it takes a lot of experience and discussions to pull us out. This one I'm going to come back to later. That's a perceptual shift. Okay. There are two pictures in here. There's an older woman and a younger woman. Now just think about that, and later on I'm going to come back to this one. But once again, what do you perceive? All right, the first thing we want to do when we talk about perception is we have to talk about sensory inputs. Sensory inputs. Information has to come into your brain so then you perceive. So our senses, what? Our sense of smell, taste, touch, sight, hearing, all of that information is coming into your brain. But what you don't realize is that you don't perceive everything that your sensory system brings in. Did you catch that? You don't perceive all of the information that your sensory system brings in. Matter of fact, you don't even pay attention to all of the information that's coming in. You still with me? All right. Because your sensory system is a data reduction system. Data reduction system. Can you feel your toes in your shoes, your sandals, your flip-flops? Now you can, but you weren't a couple of minutes ago, were you? You weren't paying, here's the key word, attention to that. Everybody blinking? You are blinking, but you don't what? Pay attention to that. Okay, do you feel your rings on your fingers, those you have earrings on, do you feel them? You can now if you pay attention to them. However, our sensory system is a data reduction system. It doesn't bring in all this information. By the way, if you want to feel all this stuff, take some LSD. Okay? Because what it does, it changes the way you perceive the world. Don't do that. Okay? It changes the way you perceive the world, and sometimes it's difficult to perceive what's real and what's not, hallucinations that are there, because it changes the way information comes into your brain and how you process those sensory informations. Sensory coding is what? Sensory coding means sensing takes place in the brain. That's a dumb statement, isn't it? Duh. But it doesn't take place here or here or here, because once again it's a data reduction system, and what senses comes into your brain is really about what you're paying attention to. Now, your book doesn't cover subliminal messages anymore, but I'll just do this as an aside. Did you ever hear of subliminal messages? Those are messages that come in above your physiological threshold, but are below your perceptual threshold. And people, they still do this stuff, but if you go into a mall or a department store and there's music playing, and you hear the music, well, and I'm not a good musician here or recording engineer, but underneath that they have another track going, all right? And underneath that track, they may have somebody saying something like, shoplifting is illegal. Shoplifting is illegal. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. Don't steal. If you steal, you'll be arrested and prosecuted. Shoplifting is illegal. And you walking around the store and you're getting bombarded with what's called subliminal messages. Advertisers use this stuff all the time. Sometimes they hide little words and features in print advertising that's there. Sometimes what they do is that there's a message, the way somebody stands and the way the bottle is going towards the person. There are all these subliminal messages that are there that are supposed to get into your brain and influence how you think, feel, and behave. That's there. In the 1950s and early 60s, advertisers thought, this is pretty cool. We can influence people. And actually, in the movie theaters during that time, they would advertise, the famous one is Coca-Cola. What they do, there was a movie playing, and then they set up a slide projector, okay, that would bounce on the screen, and they show slides extremely quickly that was above the physiological threshold. It got into your brain, but you never perceived it. Okay? And there were statements like, drink Coca-Cola, a picture of somebody drinking Coca-Cola, and you're watching the movie, and they wanted to see if people would then go out and buy Coca-Cola. And what they found is that people started doing that. They were choosing Coca-Cola or everything else, and the advertisers went, oh, great. Well, in the 1950s and 60s, we were very, very afraid of the communist rule, that the communists were going to come over here and brainwash us and stuff. Well, congressmen were going, oh, I can't believe they're doing something like that. And so they outlawed the use of subliminal messages in movie theaters on television, but they didn't do that for print media. So sometimes you see that. And sometimes you can buy tapes to lose weight and stop smoking that are subliminal messages. So what happens is that you're listening to this music, and underneath the music it says something like, smoking is harmful to you. Each and every time you crave a cigarette, you'll think, I am a non-smoker. I am a non-smoker. And each and every time you crave a cigarette, you'll automatically stop and that hunger will go away, or whatever they may say. And they bombard you with that like that's supposed to work. Okay? Does it work? Well, there's really not a lot of solid research that says it works. But for someone who's trying to prevent shoplifting, they're figuring if I pay $10,000 for this subliminal messages and I just affect 25 people and save myself $40,000, I'll go ahead and do it. Okay? So there's subliminal messages that are there in terms of thresholds as information comes into our brains. All right. So information coming into our brains, we're talking about tuning in and tuning out. What I want to do with you today is a little experiment, okay? You're my little rats running around in a maze. Okay? What I want to do is not only tell you about sensation and perception, not only talk with you about tuning in and tuning out, but I want to see if I can teach you how to tune in a little bit better. Because when I say you, I really mean me as well. We all have learned to tune out, not tune in, right? From the moment you were little and your parents gave you that same little speech they gave you about, this is what you need to be doing, okay? And when you looked away, Dad went, look at me, and you went, okay, and you learned to do this. Looking at him and not listening whatsoever, because what did you do? You tuned out, all right? I recently went to visit my mom. My mom is 87, 88 years old. She doesn't get out of the house anymore, so I sat with her and talked with her, and read with her and showed her, I brought her an iPad and showed her how to use all that. But then we watched Turner classic movies from her day, the movies from the 1930s and 40s. Boy, do they talk a lot. It's all talking. And after a while, I was just like, God, this is boring. My mother was just really into it. Her brain, because when she grew up not with television, but with radio. And so you had to listen and really pay attention for people talking that way. So she loves those movies with all the dialogues in it. For me, they were boring, right? For you people, they're really boring. Because the movies we watch, somebody talks for about a minute, and then there's music that comes in the background. And then something blows up, okay? And it's all action and this and that. And most of you grew up on either on Sesame Street or post-Sesame Street. When Sesame Street first hit television, educators, and by the way, they were developed by educators, thought it was great because the way they did it for children whose focus was only about 2 to 4 minutes. So everything is done real quickly. But what they didn't realize is that we're also teaching our children not to focus. That pay attention for 2 or 4 minutes and then move on. 2 or 4 minutes and move on. 2 or 4 minutes went on. Then they did the electric company and they kicks it to 3 to 5 minutes, but it never really developed anymore. And all the other programs after that never taught any of us to really tune in, because what winds up happening is that anytime there's anything new or different, exciting, painful, stressful, scary to us, then our brain pays attention to it. Remember the reticular activating system? Still with me? All right, so what I want to teach you to do is to tune in. So as I go through today's class and next Thursday's class, I'm going to stop every once in a while and say, you with me? Are you still with me? Are you tuned in? Your job is to listen to me, and then when your brain starts drifting off, bring it back. Drifts off, bring it back. Drifts off, bring it back, and see if you can fully tune in. So I ask you, are you a sensual person? I didn't mean sexual. Oh, that got your attention, didn't it? By the way, if you're in a crowded church bar where there's a lot of people and everybody's talking, just do this. Now, I don't know if you want to do this in a church, but just say, sex, okay? And see how many people around you hear you say that. Our brains get attuned to certain words, certain images and sounds, and if you just say, sex, okay, everybody, what? All right, everybody tunes into that. I don't mean, are you a sexual person? I really mean, are you a sensual person? Got your attention, didn't I? Tuned in, didn't you? What's a sensual person? Someone who uses their senses. Can you use your senses and bring information to your brain and hold that sense and really focus on listening? Are you with me? Listening, looking, right? Can you focus on a sense of smell? The person next to you doesn't smell very good. Don't do that. Okay? Smell, taste. I don't know. Are you a sensual person? Are you able to hold, okay, a sense in your brain and really taste food? You know how sometimes when you have your favorite food, it's ice cream, let's say, and you grab vanilla Swiss almond ice cream, and you take that first bite and you go, oh, boy, this tastes great. Second one, oh, this is good. And then you finish it all. And you go, oh, my gosh, I finished it all. You didn't taste every one. It just kind of went by. A sensual person is able to sit there and just, with every taste. This is good. Are you fully listening to me? What if you go to a concert and you spend $50, $75, $100, $150 to go to a concert? I don't do that. You might. Okay? And you're into the concert and you go, oh, this is one of my favorite songs. And before that, you're looking around going, look at that idiot over there. Look at the person over there. You're not even into the music anymore. You're thinking about other things. Are you a sensual person and can stay focused with what you hear? How about this one? You're with your favorite person. And your favorite person is starting to caress you and touch you all over, right? And you're going, ooh, this feels good. And you get into that, and you start feeling that, and then within a few short minutes, you're off thinking about something else. You're thinking about got a psychology class tomorrow, this, or hopefully not this one. I'd rather be with, no. We don't know, right? We don't know. You don't know what's going on in someone else's head. But wouldn't it be interesting? Wouldn't it be if you were able to be sensual and just stay there all that time and focus on that? If I can teach you to tune in and learn to be a sensual person, this is not working. I don't know why that didn't work. Anyway, if I can teach you to be a sensual person, it will improve your life. Those of you who are athletes, what do good athletes do? They tune in, don't they? They focus. They get into a zone that's there. What does a good actor do? An actress? What does a good a painter do? A poet? They get into a zone. Wouldn't it be wonderful to pay $25, $35, $45 for a meal, okay, and really sit and enjoy it, rather than what? Just all of a sudden you're done with it. A sensual person. All right, why can't we tune in? One of the reasons why we can't tune in is something called sensory adaptation. It's a decrease in sensory response to constant and unchanging stimuli. We become sensory adapted to any sense that we identify. Once you identify what it is in your world, your brain doesn't necessarily pay attention anymore. Example, you walk into your house and somebody's cooking your favorite food. What is it? Eggplant parmesan. It's burritos. It's, I don't know, whatever it is. And you walk in and you go, oh, wow, that smells really, really good. Ah, that's great. You walk into one side of the house, you come back into the kitchen again, you don't. Thank you. Somebody was pointing up there, right? You don't what? Smell it anymore, or don't you? That smell is still coming into your brain, but because of sensory adaptation, and your brain has already identified this is what this is, you will no longer pay attention to it, therefore you'll no longer perceive it. All you have to do, though, is go, smell, 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 and by the way, it doesn't work right away. Okay, it's almost you have to go out, change your mind, come back in, and boom, here comes the smell again. It's the same thing with any sense whatsoever. If you walk into this room and the person sitting next to you does smell, okay, and you sit there and go, God, does he stink? Ooh, she's stinky. Woo-hoo. Okay? After a while, you're not going to smell them because of sensory adaptation. Unless you do this. God, they stink. Gosh, they stink. Gosh, they stink. God, they stink. Gosh, they stink. And what are you doing? You're keeping it in your brain, and you're not sensory adapting. Your brain is not going to pay attention to anything after a while unless it's new, different, stimulating, or dangerous. All right? Remember the reticular activating system? This is the same thing here. Sensory adaptation. Caressing, caressing, caressing. Good, good, good. After a while, you don't feel it anymore because your body has identified with it. Unless you learn to tune in. Unless you engage those frontal lobes and say, this is important. Still with me? Are you saying to yourself, what Steve is saying is important? I need to listen to this? Or are you drifting off? Stay with me. What do we need to learn to do? Something called selective attention, where you're voluntarily focusing on specific sensory input. Selective attention. Listening to me, drifting off, coming back. Attend to me. Select to attend to me. By the way, movies nowadays know a lot about this, and I know they don't want you to become sensory adapted, so what do? They change the scenery, they change the music, there's a lot of action. They're not like those old black and white movies from many years ago, where people, what their brains learn just to listen. And what would happen to you if I stood up here like this and just stared straight ahead and just talked with you? after a while, what would happen is your brains would become sensory adaptive to that. Now, wouldn't they? Of course they would, okay? So what am I trying to do? Clap, walk around, look around to get you to focus. You still with me? Increase in sensory response that accompanies perceptual defense, threshold shifts, and unchanging stimuli or space travel. All right? So you know the answer to this one. All right? Unchanging stimuli. Oh, look at that. Boy, you people are incredible. Helps when you give the answer, doesn't it? All right. So are you still, now I guess this is a dumb question because you all drifted off because I was, all right, are you with me right now? Tell me, are you focused? And I'll put this up again. I was on a roll and I was going to throw this up there to see if you were still focused. We'll start again. All right? So, most of you focused. All right, so let's do this. Let's learn to tune in. Developing focusing skills. You also hear this in terms of one width. Sometimes one width. Anyone ever learn meditation? No? One person? Meditation is an incredible way to learn to tune in, to focus your mind. Those of you who do yoga, okay? Yoga also helps you to tune in. Self-hypnosis helps you to do that. How do we develop focusing skills? Here's a little aside. Psychology, a lot of times, when we talk about how to change behaviors, the answers are usually very, very simple. The plans that I can give you are usually very, very simple. However, to put it into practice, it becomes very, very difficult. Very difficult. It takes a lot of work to change. So, how do you learn to focus? Very simply, what you might want to do is go home tonight and pick one sense to work on. One sense to work on. So it could be hearing or sight or smell or touch, whatever it may be. Let's do hearing. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to put my little earbuds in or headphones or whatever I'm going to put on. I put it on and I'm going to select some music that's fairly new to me. Not something that's old that you know already, because once you know it already, you become sensory adapted to it, and you're not going to listen to it. Something that's fairly new that you like, turn it up, not so much that you hurt your eardrums, but just enough so that you drown anything else out and get into the music, be one with the music. As you play the music, you might also want to set up a stopwatch or something to time you, and what you're going to do is focus for 30 seconds. I'm just going to be in the music for 30 seconds. Go. And as you listen to the music, you want to play with the music in your head. Let me see, is that the bass section? Where's the rhythm section? Is that a violin? What are they really saying? Boom, 30 seconds are up. Stop. Stop the song. Okay, let's do it again. Do it for another 30 seconds. Good. Now, what you're doing is you're trying to train your brain to focus. Then you want to kick it up to 45 seconds. Go. Stop. Okay, good. Now, what you don't want to do is say, put the music on, I'm going to focus. Because sooner or later, you're going to become defocused. So you have to get it's called systematic progressions. Okay? You have to be successful one small step at a time. All right, 45 seconds, do it for a minute, do it for a minute and 15 seconds, minute and 30 seconds, and you go through it. Okay, start the same song again and see if you can build up to 2 and 3 minutes, and then stop. And then the next day, you might want to come back and have a different song and do the same thing, but start at 2 minutes this time. By the way, if you're doing 45 seconds and your brain drifts off, then stop, go back, do another 45 seconds. Don't go to 60 seconds until you can do 45 seconds. Because what you're doing is retraining your brain systematically. The problem when people do this is they try to do it all at once and they're not successful. Or they do 45, then they jump for 5 minutes, and you can't do that. It has to be progressive because that's the way the brain learns, is slow, small steps. Slow, small steps. Pretty soon, maybe you can work it up to 30 minutes. Wow. Can you imagine fully focusing for 30 minutes? That's pretty incredible to be able to do that. Okay? If you can do that, boy, that'd be great. Can you imagine just opening up your psychology book and reading and really studying for 30 minutes instead of like you did tonight or tomorrow night, just thinking about everything else, right? Wow. Wouldn't that be great, those of you who are athletes, to just really focus on what you're doing? To get into something, be one with? So you want to practice this tonight. You can do it with auditory. Take a picture out. Focus on a picture. Don't do television because television has too many sensory inputs to it. You want to isolate it. You want to do maybe food. Taste food. Good. Stop. Put it down. All right. Go back. Taste something different. Got it. Put it back. Really focus again. You'll probably all gain 20 pounds by the end of the week, but try that. Go to your loved one and say, I have a homework assignment tonight. I am to focus. All I want you to do is I lay here and you just touch me. Okay? I don't do anything else. I just get touched for a minute, stop, 2 minutes, stop. Oh, that might be a good one. Okay? So it's a homework assignment. So what you're trying to do is learn to what? Tune in. Once you learn to tune in and can get a good, let's do 15 minutes. If you can get a good 15 minutes, I would say that was successful. That's pretty darn good. And you keep pushing it. What you're also doing to your brain, since your brain has numerous types of connections with it, is that once you learn one sense, it's going to be easier to learn another sense. Okay? It's going to be easier to learn another sense. Auditory, go to visual, go to smell, go to taste. Before I know it, you people will be wandering around Dallas, really mellow, just eating your food, real slow, tasting it, smelling it, enjoying the changes of season and everything. And if you learn to do this, you'll have wonderful sex. And if you learn to do all this, God, your life is just going to slow down. You'll be able to just focus and be one with everything. Wouldn't that be incredible? Now, by the way, a lot of you try to do that through the use of drugs. All right, we'll talk about that when we get to that chapter on that as well. But people try to use drugs to do that, right? To change your perceptions of the world. You going to try this? Oh, are you with me? All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to see who's still with me, who drifted off. But I also like to ask you, those of you, wow, that's quite a bit. That's 90% of you. Okay, we're focused. What were you doing to be focused? Somebody. You're what? Paying attention, right? Your brains weren't drifting off. You were maybe looking at me. Okay? You were listening to me. Maybe you're writing things down. We also know the more senses you use at one time, the more you're going to focus. The more you'll be able to tune in as well. So you're still listening to me, watching me, okay, writing things down. The 10% or the 4% that drifted off, I'm not making fun of you, but what did you do? Anybody could be brave and tell me? Well, maybe as I was talking, whatever I said was interesting to you and you drifted off. Okay? You went off into being with that person tonight and then touching them or something, right? Or eating your favorite ice cream and you drifted off. Well, the trick is, in meditation, they talk about slowing down the monkey brain. And the monkey brain is like a monkey that's if you watch them at the zoo, they're always flipping around and moving all over the place. Slowing that down and focusing. Now, you might have drifted off in the last 2 minutes. If you did, come on back. Let's talk about perception now. Right? Sensory input coming into your brain. Now let's talk about perception. So what do you perceive? What's up and what's down? Up and down, right. That's a good answer. What is up and down? Up and down. Is up on the top or is up on the bottom? Is up to the left? Is up to the right? Now most of your brains right now is going, what the hell are you talking about, Steve? Up is on the top. That guy has the rope. He's trying to pull that guy down, or is he pulling him up? Is that guy going up or is he going down? Most of you won't see any of this because your brain is orientated to a world that whatever's on the top of the page is up and whatever's the bottom is on the bottom. And you won't perceive this way. What your brain does to you automatically is always asking you, how do we know what's true and real? Because that's the basis of perception. How do we know what's true and real? The first part of this discussion on perception is going to be about the brain and how the brain affects our perception. How our brain affects our perception. The brain tries to keep information as consistent as possible. Your brain doesn't like changes. Before class, we were talking about children and how children, they won't tell you this because their job is to push the envelope on you, but they like consistency. They like to know they're going to bed at a certain time, you're going to eat at a certain time. In fact, we all do that. We like to get into rhythms. And your brain leads you with this. Your brain doesn't like change. Change causes stress. Doesn't it? Realistically, it does, doesn't it? Anytime you change things in your life, it causes stress. Well, your brain doesn't like stress, so it's always trying to keep the world as constant as possible, even though it may violate principles of reality. Did you hear what I said? Your brain likes to keep the world as constant and consistent as possible, even though it may violate principles of reality. One example is called size constancy. And in size constancy, your brain wants to keep sizes exactly the same and doesn't like any changes. So if I took my right hand and put it in front of my face, if I took my left hand and put it out in front of my hand like that, the way I see this, not perceive it, the way I see this is that this hand is going to be smaller than this hand. Because this hand is right in front of my face, right? It's going to look larger. That's going to look smaller. It's way over here. If I see a person walking towards me and they're at the far edge of my sight, they're only about this big, right? All I have to do is go like this. That's all they are, about this big. Now, do I perceive them as this little person? Do I perceive them as they walk closer to me? Are they getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger? That's logical, isn't it? Far away, they're smaller, they get closer, they get bigger, bigger, and bigger. But your brain doesn't want to do that. Your brain automatically does this for you. It's size constancy. It doesn't see that person on my hands changing sizes. It doesn't see the person all of a sudden getting bigger. It keeps it as constant as possible, doesn't it? Now, this seems really dumb, doesn't it? And most of you are going, yeah, so? Because that's what your brain is doing for you right now. Yeah, so? It doesn't change, Steve. I know a person can change sizes, but that's not the way you see it. This is what your brain does for you, but it's also learned. It's also learned. If you grew up in a jungle where everything was right in front of you, and you lived in that jungle for 10 or 12 years, never really got any practice with distancing, if I took you out then to a huge field or a savanna and I had an animal walk towards you, okay, you would say to me, whoa, magic. You're making that animal get bigger and bigger as it comes towards me. Whoa. Because your brain wasn't trained for size constancy. Every time I talk about this, every semester, I look at you and your faces are like, oh, okay? It's just what your brain does automatically. The same thing with shape constancies. Shapes, right before our eyes begin to change. Right before our eyes begin to change. That door over there is a rectangle. Right up here is a rectangle. Right? 4 right angles. However, when that door opens up and goes towards us, the door turns into a trapezoid. All right, look, trapezoid. Right? The angles change. Now, you don't sit in a door and look at the door open towards you and go, whoa, look, that door changes shapes, new, groovy. I really like that. That's just if you want some hallucinogenic. Then you may see it that way. But you usually don't, because your brain what? Keeps it constant. Keeps it constant. Your brain doesn't like change. I'll just do that one. Still with me? Some of you drifted off. I saw you texting up there. Now that's a distraction, isn't it, when you sit and text other people? All right, so we're down to 84%. 74% of the people were with me. Well, what happened? Now, it doesn't matter to me. You need to know what you did that you drifted off. Okay? So what'd you do? Thought about something else, right? Something else is more interesting. The person next to you said something. Somebody walked in behind me, okay, and you got distracted. So distractions are normal, but you need to learn to come back and focus again. Come on back. All right, brightness constancies, once again. Now, your brain doesn't allow this to happen, but if I had some people who have white shirts on, I think I only got one person who has something white on, okay? But there's another person who has something white on. If I begin to brighten the lights, what basically happens, those white clothing begins to absorb light more, and they get brighter and brighter and brighter. As I dim the lights, what happens is that they go towards the shading of white, which goes more towards a gray color that's there. Now, if I did that right in front of you, like this and this and this, okay, what would happen to you? Do you actually sit there and go, wow, white, whoa, gray, whoa, white? That's pretty cool. No, you don't, okay, because your brain what? Keeps everything constant. It doesn't like change. Tell you, you'd be so stressed out if shapes and sizes and colors would just change right before your eyes. You wouldn't like that. You get very, very stressed. So your brain does this to you on a constant basis. There's a term we use in the study of perception that's called perceptual grouping, where sensations are made into meaningful perceptions. Now, let me stop for a second here, too, and talk about psychological constancies as well. What you learned as a child about, now you fill in the blank, those people. What you learned as a child about those people. Now, those people could be ethnic groups, it could be genders, it could be ages. It's whatever your bias you learned as a child, your prejudice got built into your brain. You hear what I just said? It got built into your brain. Now, as an adult, you look at those people, and automatically your brain is going to go towards what you learned about those people, and your brain uses a constancy, a consistency that's there. You view, here's the key word, perceive those people in that way. And if those people do something different than what you used to, sometimes you might even say, gosh, for a so-and-so person, you're not like the rest of them. And you're kind of like, well, that's a prejudice statement, right? But at least you're learning that's there. By the way, it's constant. You don't even think about it. Your prejudices are wired into your brain in terms of how you learned. And the way to break free of them has to be what? Through using your frontal lobes, paid attention, and changing those views that are there. Because your brain just does this to you. Your brain doesn't like to view the world in a changing way. So it brings you right back to your old bias and your prejudice. All right, perceptual grouping, where sensations are made into meaningful perceptions. So you look out into the world, and what do you perceive? Well, your brain looks around, goes, I don't know what's going on, and then boom! It just decides this is what's going on. This is what is real. Believe it or not, you can read this. believe it or not, now if you just look at it real quick as a totality that's there, you go, what is that? But you can read this, can't you? I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. If I had a microphone, she'd be reading this very, very clearly. I'm not going to do all that for you, but you can read this, can't you? Now, don't get caught up with reading like a first grader and going, I couldn't learn. Okay? You're breezing over this because what? Your brains were taught to read, right? You know how to read. You can switch the letters around and everything else, but your brain is what? Making something that's nonsensical into something meaningful for you. It does it what? Automatically. That's there. Isn't that strange how well you can do this? Again, it's your brain is looking out into the world. Whatever you have learned, your brain is picking up on that, and you're wired for this, and it just works. What's there? It's two faces and a chalice or a cup. Now, this is a pretty common one. People have seen this one before, right? Now, what your brain is doing is it's looking at it, it's saying, well, what's going on here? And you're trying to make it meaningful. Can you all see both of these? Okay, now, when I go through these, it's okay if you don't see this. This is not a psychological test in any way, all right? We're not going to say, God, you can't see this? What's wrong with you? I tell you what else goes on when I show these. It's part of what's called social conformity. What happens is if you can't see it, everybody else around you see it, you go, oh, okay. Because you don't want to be the odd one out, okay? But I'll always show you this. All right, there are two faces that are here. Okay, here's one face. All right, there's the nose, the mouth, the chin, the neck, the scalp, the forehead, the nose, the mouth, the chin, right? So this is called a figure ground, right? There's a figure that you see and then part of the background. In this case, the figure is in the foreground, which is the face, and then the white part is in the background. If you want to switch it, the white becomes the foreground, and you begin to see what? A chalice that's here? Right, or a cup, some people say. You can go back. Can you go back and forth? Change your perspective on things, back and forth, back and forth. By the way, it's impossible to see both of them at exactly the same time, but you can do it real quickly. You switch back and forth. Now, the more you're able to see this, then your brain makes it meaningful. All right? Which one of these is the male and which one is the female? The one, now, and you're right. This is the male?
Female.
Some say male. All right, so why is this the female?
Chin.
Because of the chin?
Yeah.
Chin's different? Nose made, notice this nose a little more pointed than this one? Is that right? Is that right? All right, so here we go. Why did you even perceive it that way? Just because I asked the question? There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference with this. All this is you do this, you draw it and you push it like this. But so how easily people can be fooled. How easily people can misperceive. Matter of fact, you'll still look at this and some of you will argue with me. No, that's the male. I just know it is. I perceive it that way. How easily we can be persuaded. I didn't even say anything. I just asked the question. Well, if he asked the question, then I guess it must mean one's male and one's female. Right? Once again, how easily we can change our perception, and what we think is real may not be real. How many times as a little child did you really see a monster? Did you really see and hear something in your house? Hell, that probably happened this weekend, right? You really believe there's something there because you misperceive the sensory input that's coming in. Still with me? Remember, we're focusing. You're drifting away, come back. Do you realize it's been just about an hour already that we've been here? It goes pretty quickly when you're having fun, huh? So let's see, who's with me? All right, we're back up to 82%, all right? So you're drifting, you're coming back. You're drifting, you're coming back. Each and every time you drift, you want to start coming back again. My guess is it's also easier for you if I make eye contact with you, okay? Because that brings you, right, makes it more personal that's there. It's hard to do that, though, with 90 people. All right, these are called, what I just showed you, figure ground organizations. Part of a stimulus appears to stand out as an object, which is the figure, against a less prominent background, which is a ground. Can you see the forest for the trees? Okay. If you go out in this courtyard today, and there's a different ethnic group of people all hanging out together, can you see the differences among them, or do you just see them as a group? Well, our basic prejudice and our biases, usually are going to see them as a group. We don't see the figure that's there. And then our basic prejudice and biases then lead us to make a statement as, look at those people over there. All of those people are like, and I don't know what they're like, but it's your prejudice that's going to make it seem that way. It's what your brain does to you automatically. Figure ground orientations. These are also known as gestalts, because the gestaltists were the ones who worked with a lot of this figure ground organizations. You got this? No. Okay. Figure ground. And there was an example I just gave you before of changing your perspectives that are there in terms of the figure and the ground. I hope you can change your perspective. I hope you don't look at the forest, but you do see the trees, and you can see individual differences with people. Instead of locking people into our basic prejudice that this is what those people are like. I hope you can do that. You've got to train yourself, because not just our culture, but any culture, and by the way, your brain just likes the world to be that way. Your brain likes the world to be consistent and constant. We want to see people as this way. Our world as being this way, rather than millions of individual pieces. All right. Perceptual grouping. We want to talk about a term called perceptual hypothesis. What's a perceptual hypothesis? It's an educated guess. A perceptual educated guess. Remember we covered hypothesis in the first chapter? Perceptual hypothesis. You make an educated guess about what's going on. So you and your buddy drove to school together this morning. And your good buddy has on a pair of shorts, a t-shirt, a hat, and some running shoes. Okay? And you tell him, hey, I'm going to meet you out in this courtyard here after class around 10:30. And he says, okay, meet you there, 10:30. Don't be late. Okay, no problem, 10:30. All right? You're sitting out there at 10:25, and here he comes across way over the other side of the courtyard. Here comes a guy with a hat on, a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and some running shoes on. You automatically jump up. It's 10:30. You told him 10:30. Jump up and go, hey, dude, over here, over here, over here. You're making a perceptual hypothesis, an educated guess, based on what? What you know. It's 10:30. You're supposed to show up. You had a hat on this morning, a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and running shoes. And you're going, hey, hey, hey. And that guy comes closer and closer to you, and it's not your friend. And he's looking at you, and he's looking around going, is he pointing at me? What's the deal here? And you get what? Embarrassed. And you sit down and go, I don't believe I made that mistake. Why? Because you did what? A perceptual hypothesis. You made an educated guess. Last 4 people you've gone out with cheated on you. Okay? It took a while for you to start going out with somebody again. But you're back into it again. All right? You're back into it again. Things are going well. You're back into it again. And they say to you, I'm going to be a little late tonight. I'll be home a little late. What were you going to be? I'll be a little late. What were you going to be? I'm just going to be a little late. Well, what's the big thing here? I'm just going to be a little late. Well, where are you going to be? Well, I'm just going to be a little late. And you're going, oh, yeah, I bet you he or she's going to be a little late. They're probably going to be with somebody. Oh, I think they're going to be with somebody. That's what it is. Actually, what they were going to do is going to go buy you some flowers and everything else. And they finally come home, but you are mad, you're angry, and you're upset. And this person's clothes is a little tousled. They're a little wrinkled and stuff. And you look at them right and go, you're cheating on me. I know you are. Why? Because you made a perceptual hypothesis, an educated guess, based on your past experiences that were there. It wasn't true. Perceptual hypothesis. These are embarrassing. Did you ever have these happen to you? They can be embarrassing. You tell a good friend of yours, call me, will you? Call me about 10:30 tonight. Boy, I got some dirt on our friend so-and-so. 10:30 comes up, you don't look at the caller ID, comes up, you go, let me tell you about her. You know who it is, right? It's her. No, never happened to you, huh? One day I was sitting in my office, I'll tell you, I'll embarrass myself. I was sitting in my office one day, for some reason or another, I was thinking about when I was in graduate school, which was decades ago, okay? I was in graduate school, I was thinking about this one woman, wasn't romantic involved, she was just really sharp, I always liked her. I thought, let me get on Facebook, see if I can find her. Then I had to come to class. So I was walking down this hallway here, and out around the corner comes this woman, and out of the corner of my eye I went, I don't believe it's her. You know, you got to realize I was in graduate school maybe 30 years ago, so this woman probably has changed dramatically. But I saw her and I looked, and I got into a big brain. I don't know where I went with my brain. I went, what is she doing here? I looked at this woman, I went, hi. And I went up to her like this, and I got like this close to her, and she went, get away. You know, who are you? And I went, oh, hell. This is not her. But I got so lost in what? Kind of obsessed with her and thinking about her. And really, this woman looked just like her 30 years ago. But God, that was embarrassing, wasn't it? That's never happened to you. Yes, it has. Ambiguous stimuli. Okay? And what did I say? I said, I'm sorry. I was just thinking about somebody else. I thought this was you. And I was just stumbling for words at that point because I was embarrassed. I said, sorry. Ambiguous stimuli. How many legs does this elephant have? 4. You already count them. There's one. Does that have a trunk or another leg? It looks like a trunk. Leg. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. 1, 2, 3. What's the deal here? Ambiguous stimuli. Okay? Confuses us. Shocks us. What's going on here? Sometimes we misperceive. We don't know what's real and what isn't real. Based on figure ground, on colors, and blacks and whites. How about this one? How is that stacked, or is it stacked? Or is it up? Is it down? Is it spaced? Yes, that's how they do it. Thank you. But it's an illusion, isn't it? Right? It's optical illusion, right? Those of you in art know a lot about this stuff. How about that one? This is one of my favorites. A 3-pronged widget. All right, 1, 2, 3. 1. All right, let's draw this one. All right, so it starts right here. Oh, we get that, right? Well, let's do this. Here comes this line, and there. I got that line right, goes there. Now this line here goes. No, wait a minute. Goes here. Don't look at this too closely. You get a headache, I think. It may upset your stomach. But ambiguous stimuli. What is it? It's perceptual hypothesis that we wind up making. What is real and what isn't real? A lot of times we get fooled. A lot of times. Do you ever think about how do we ever communicate with each other if our perceptions are so off? If we're not hearing, seeing what's really going on? How miscommunication we have, isn't it? How our judgments are based on prejudice and misperceptions. Still with me? I hope by the end of this chapter, one, you learn about perception, but I also hope you learn to be more objective. Because what our brains do to us and the way we've been trained, we're not trained to be objective. We're very, very biased people. The human race is, not just us. Still with me? Well, we're 85%. Hey, we're doing well. Those of you, hopefully it's not the same people who keep drifting off. Okay? Because it's him. Okay? You need to come back. You need to focus. You're not staying with me. You're not going to be a sensual person. Come on. I need you to be a sensual person. I don't think it's time yet. All right, go ahead and do it now. I thought I'd be ending today, but I'm not yet. Do it now and I won't do it later. No one leave. Okay, everybody got this? All right, let's talk about depth perception. You've heard of depth perception, right? All right? You see things, 3 dimensions, depth perception. The classic question is, how do we learn perception? Is it inborn? Are we born with this ability to do it? Is it learned? Well, guess what the answer is? It's both. No, it's both. Like everything else, it's biopsychosocial. It's both. So we are wired for depth perception, size constancies, shape constancies. We're wired for it, but we have to get experience with it in order for it to actuate, in order for it to develop. So if you were born blind or something happened and you couldn't see anything, and then all of a sudden you had a surgery and you got your sight back, you would not have depth perception, size constancies, shape constancies right away. You could be in a 6-story hospital, okay, and then someone say, well, look outside. You can finally see, and you'd look outside and you go, oh, those are little cars, and try to reach down and grab one and fall out the window, okay? Hopefully that wouldn't happen, but you have no depth perception. You have no shapes perception or size. You have to learn that. The classic study was done in this study. And what happened in this particular study was that, and maybe the answer to this is don't marry another psychologist, but this is the Gibson's visual cliff experiment. And there were 2 psychologists, and they took their young toddler, 3.5 years old, out to the Grand Canyon. And the toddler ran towards the Grand Canyon, and Mom went, no, stop, and grabbed him. And Dad went, let him go. He'll be fine. He'll stop before he gets to the edge. And she said, no, he won't. He could fall over. He said, no, he's got depth perception. He'll see that. He'll stop. She said, no. He said, yes. They argued. She then said, I'm going to do an experiment on this. So what she did is that she went back and did what's called the Gibson visual cliff experiment. What she did was bring in mothers or child caregivers and put them standing over here. Okay? Now what is this? This is a platform, and this is the shallow side, and there's a checkered square here. And then when they put the child here, and they let the child crawl, because Mama's over here going, come on, baby, come on, baby, come on, baby. And the child comes over here, and when the child gets here, they have to slow down, get up, and then look down. So what they then would see is the floor pattern seen through the glass. The glass is not real close. The glass is like way down here, okay? Why is the glass there? By the way, it's very strong glass. So if the child falls, the child doesn't get hurt. But the child's perception is that there's a floor down here. Therefore, if they go across, stop, look down, they'll realize it's depth perception, they won't go any further, right? So Mama goes, come on, baby, come on, baby, come on, baby, come on, baby. Babies would go across. And the majority of the babies got to this point, stopped, and just sat there and looked down, looked at Mama, and went, and started crying. Kind of a mean experiment. Why? Because they had what? Depth perception. Now, what a twist on some of this was it also depended upon the age. What they did with some babies is get them real close to it who couldn't crawl to see whether or not their brains were fully developed just yet, and they tried to determine that. Not a great experiment, but at least it showed it looks like babies are born with the ability to have depth perception, and then the environment brings them in. You might also ask, okay, how come you put an infant on a bed, put pillows around them, and they always fall off the bed? Okay, pillows are not pillows. Sometimes they fall off. Well, what happens sometimes if they don't have the neuromuscular development and the perceptual development, some babies would crawl along here, get to this point, and they would fall over. Okay? Or a baby on a bed that's very young creeps along and then goes over and looks down. Their brain does register, oh, wow, I'm going to fall, don't go any further. But they don't have the neuromuscular developed just yet to say, stop, legs, and then they go over sometimes. So it is a combination between neural development and visual development. I've lost you now, didn't I? So if I did a slide right now that said, are you focused? Most of you would be off somewhere, right? Because you were kind of like, this is boring. Still with me? All right. Some of you have great powers of concentration. It's incredible to be able to focus. You know, those of you who focus better, my guess, you do better in your studies because you concentrate better. Some of you don't do very well. Could be a simple matter of just not focusing, just not learning to pay attention. Your minds are always drifting all over the place. Boy, if you learn meditation or learn to tune in, you might improve your grades dramatically. All right, how do we perceive depth? How does it really work up here? Well, one way we perceive depth is through what's called convergence. You have two eyes. In both eyes, there's a left and right field of vision. A left and right field of vision. So what happens is, as your eyes converge on an object, that information comes into your brain and is superimposed on it, two different fields of vision to give you that 3D vision that's there. Two eyes, two fields of vision, it both comes in. Got it? I can give you a real simple example of this. If you have a spare piece of paper somewhere, maybe that syllabus I gave you at the beginning of the semester, just pull out a blank piece of paper or something with just a piece of paper. Would you do that? This is going to be fun. If you're out with your friends on a date this weekend, you can do this. If you have young children, obviously if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. If you have young children, they'll think this is magical. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, what I'm going to do, when I ask you to do this, do it. Don't do it just yet. Well, you can make a little telescope right now, okay? Now, don't do this yet. Let me show you how to do this. If you do this too quickly, it will not work. Watch me. Don't do it yet. Watch me. I'm going to close one eye. Okay? Now, some of you can't close an eye, all right? So, I'm going to close one eye. All right, I'm going to do this, all right? So I got one eye closed. Then I'm going to take my telescope, and I'm going to put it right in front of the other eye. So I'm looking at you. Hello. This eye is closed. If you can't close this eye, it's not going to work. So I'm going to close this eye. Then I'm going to take this hand. See? This hand. I'm going to put it halfway down the telescope. And then I'm going to slowly open up the eye that's closed. And then tell me what you see. All right? Close one eye. Put the telescope in front of the eye that's open. Take your other hand, put it halfway down the telescope, and then slowly open up the eye that's closed and tell me what you see. If you don't see a hole in your hand, then you're not doing it correctly. Because what's happening is your brain is taking two bits of information from your two eyes, right? Superimposing it in your brain to give you a 3D image. Now, the problem with some of you is you've got to keep this eye closed. This eye has no input. There's no visual input coming into the brain right now. Just this one does it. No input, no input, no input. Then you take this hand, put it halfway down, then slowly open this eye, and then boom, your eye then brings an image in and it superimposes it. You got to put your hand right close to the telescope. All right? So if you have little children, this will be fun for them to do. Can't you see yourself on a date this weekend going, oh, this is really cool? Now, what this is also called, let me just finish. What this is also called is retinal disparity. It's also, another name for it is stereoscopic vision. Stereoscopic vision, too. Stereoscopic, right? Have you ever gone to see a 3D movie? My gosh, there are 3D movies about everything now, aren't there? So you go over here to the one here off of Webb Chapel, that's there. How do they do that? Well, this is how they do it. This is the old way of doing it. They have newer ways of doing it now. But they usually film the action with two different cameras. Okay? Film it with 2 different cameras. Then they have 2 projectors. They project both those projectors on the screen. When it's a 3D film with both projectors being projected, what happens? It's blurry, isn't it? You put on the glasses, though, and the glasses close the right field and the left field. So what winds up happening in your brain is just like this. You have stereoscopic vision. The images get transposed on each other, and boom, it becomes 3D. It's exactly how they do that. Now they have better techniques now. The guy who did Avatars developed different technology to do this. James Cameron, I think his name was. Okay, but they have different ways of doing it, but that was the old way of doing it, but still works the same way. You got to wear the glasses, don't you? By the way, they will come out with a television set that will have that built into it, so you don't have to wear those glasses anymore. I think they have one out already. Okay, they do. Okay, that's there. So that'll be something new. But that's 3D vision, retinal disparity, stereoscopic vision.